Disney Plus's Star Wars The Mandalorian. We're here with director Deborah Chow, the star, the Mando himself, Pedro Pascal, and series executive producer and director, or as Taika Waititi likes to call him, the encyclopedia lore of Star Wars, Dave Filoni.
Hello.
Welcome, everyone. Before we get started, we have a clip from the opening episode.
Anyone else?
The tracking fob is still active. My sensors indicate that there is a life form present.
Wait, they said 50 years old.
Species age differently. Perhaps it could live many centuries. Sadly, we'll never know.
No. We'll bring it in alive.
The commission was quite specific. The asset was to be terminated.
Where do I start? I have 1,000 questions. Let me begin with my first question is, we heard for a very long time that Disney was trying to make a Boba Fett movie. How did things evolve into a Mandalorian series? And were any of the elements that were supposed to be in the original, in the movie that was being kicked around, was any of that pulled forward into the Mandalorian series?
The Mandalorian idea really starts with Jon Favreau coming forward saying that he'd like to develop a concept and talking to Kathleen Kennedy about it. And she knew that I had done a lot of work with Mandalorian people and culture on Clone Wars with George and over the years. And she also knew that I knew Jon. So she called me in when we had a meeting where Jon pitched us this idea, and he really loved the imagery of a lone gunfighter and Westerns. And, you know, the idea that when we were all kids, Boba Fett was a man with no name. There was not very little known about him. Even his publicity stills, are evocative of Clint Eastwood's, character from the Dollars trilogy. So it is very powerful imagery. But now that we're 6 saga films in by that point with George, he had shown that Boba was a clone child and that he grew up. And so we knew more about him. So some of the mystique had been, in a way, effectively taken away from the Boba Fett that I grew up with. Jon's idea was kind of reimagine that character as this just straight on bounty hunter and kind of take that imagery back of the lone gunfighter. But the revelation really was the idea of this child in a lone wolf and cub sensibility. And so that's where the idea comes from. There wasn't really any crossover with any previous development. All development at Lucasfilm, like we have development that goes back to the 1970s. And so it's not uncommon to pull imagery or things from anything else that's been developed that got discarded and pull it in. And as we were discussing, we even used toys that were never in the movie, like, the Imperial Transport. So Star Wars is a massive playground, and we're just really fortunate that so many creative people are involved in it, and very top level creative people. So you get the best minds coming together, and then you play Star Wars. I mean, that's a simplification of the whole thing, but a kind of a fun way to look at it.
The other mind-blowing thing about this series is the production value. If you could talk, Deborah and Dave, if you could talk about how this show pushed the boundaries. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm under the impression the series was shot in either Burbank or NoHo. So I have this idea of you guys being in that area, and then it just, oh my God, you make it all look real, and that you're shooting over in Jordan. And tell me about blowing our minds.
I mean, I've worked on quite a lot of television, but this was nuts. I'd never worked on anything that was like this before. And I think, a large part obviously was the technology. We were doing stuff that was so groundbreaking that nobody had ever done it before. So it was interesting. I think like when Dave and I started, because we were right at the beginning of the shoot schedule, I don't think we even knew fully if it was going to work, on a lot of levels. So it was really interesting to work on something not only that was creatively so challenging and so ambitious, but at the same time to be sort of really pushing the boundaries of technology and sort of the craft of making it.
Now, Deborah, you're going to be the sole director on the new Obi-Wan series that's in development at Disney Plus, and you're also the first female director to Star Wars. You directed episode 3, The Sin, and also episode 7. But as a director, how do you put your stamp on it? Where did you find where and same with you, Dave? How could you put your touch in regards to when you look at that episode, you're like, that's mine?
It was a really interesting process going through. And I think one of the things that for me was really special about the show was that there was a really diverse sort of range of people from different backgrounds and point of views on the show. So not only was it women, obviously I'm Asian, and Rick and Bryce, everybody. So I feel like, and I don't think it was by accident. I think Dave and John really wanted that, that diversity of point of view really came through, where we were all trying to sort of make the same organic whole, but I think we all had our own voice within it. So, because I can feel it sort of when I watch everybody's episode, that you can sort of I can feel the director and the creators in it.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because I've done a lot of Star Wars, but not in live action ever. And so for me, it was a chance to put into practice a lot of things that George had explained to me or talked to me over the years while I worked on Clone Wars. And I felt really fortunate to be put into position on Mandalorian because it meant that, Jon Favreau would be there as like a backstop, and he could, really mentor me through a lot of process. But really, the team of us, I have to say, all of the directors, we were all working together quite a bit. I was super fortunate while I was doing the first episode to have Deb there as we were block shooting, and we would kind of commiserate in between, our shoot on what was going well on a day or what wasn't. Because like she said, we were using a lot of emerging technology. And so when one of us would be working in the volume, it was a chance to kind of compare notes of what actually was functioning well and not. And so the collaboration was within episodes, across episodes. And I have to tell you, we're fortunate, not just for the level of talent, but for the caliber of people that we had, as far as their generosity and their openness and their kindness. It made working in a very, I think, high pressure situation a lot easier, because there was a real sense of team, and we all wanted all the episodes to be good. I mean, I think that's normal, but in a really, I think a really deep way, helping one another, and just, it felt like a real team. So that's really one of the things I remember most about the season when I see it is, wow, we were out there doing that as a group. And I can remember, some of the uncertainty, but then the payoff at the end and the quality of the images we got is a real testament to the collaboration that happened.
Pedro, tell me everything. Tell me about how the role came to you, how you notched it. You've got a voice that could cut through the galaxy. You are intense.
It was one of those calls that basically was Jon Favreau wants to meet you and discuss something Star Wars. That was literally what was said. You never know what is like lost in between the calls and what they intended me to know or what they didn't intend me to know. But I guess I unconsciously I don't ask questions, and so I stepped into a room, and every wall was covered with story illustrations of the whole season, and I saw this Boba Fett looking character, and all of these incredible, like, familiar and brand new creatures, and this adorable, Yoda looking child. I saw all of it, and was just enchanted by it. And they were, I was like taking everything in visually, and they were talking about all of it. And in the back of my mind, I just was asking myself, what do they want me to do? Why do they have me here? And it seemed like they thought that I understood that they were talking to me about the title character, but I had no idea. And I remember leaving, though, and calling my agent and being like, and I know that I got it wrong, and I was corrected thereafter, but I was like, they want me to be Boba Fett.
Fair enough.
Tell me a little bit about your inspiration in building him, his movement, getting inside of his mind.
He's a very economical character, and so the idea of achieving a lot with very, very little was something that was the primary challenge, I think, for everyone in terms of the character of the Mandalorian. And so I would just ask them, what should I watch? What should I be thinking about? And it was, very much in referencing the Sergio Leone spaghetti westerns. Clint Eastwood was early in the conversation, and also Akira Kurosawa's samurai films, and just sort of activating the imagination with those references, and then stepping into it and seeing, just taking as much direction as I'll allow, anyway.
Thank you all so much. This has been Disney Plus's Star Wars: The Mandalorian.